Now we're going to paint our picture of a sea scene with a small fishing boat. So the first thing I'm going to do is the sky, but before that I need to think about the horizon. And where will I have the horizon? Normally there's two main positions. We can have a low horizon, which means we're going to have a big sky, or we can have a high horizon, which means there's going to be a lot of sea. We could even have it in the middle. So I'm thinking of having a low horizon, but not super low, to about here. So that's the most important decision to begin with. And I'm not drawing a pencil line, but you can, if you like, a faint line. But I've just got a good idea it's about here. Now I'm using just 3 colours, and the first colour is yellow ochre. But perhaps before I use that, I need to wet my whole paper. I've got a mark on my paper. Can you believe it? But there you go. Keep going. Just wet all of that. Doesn't have to be thorough. Then I'm going to get some yellow ochre, and I want a mix that's not too strong. I'm just going to do this top corner, and then it's going to come down a little like that. And then I want that reflected here in the water. I'm kind of doing a mirror image of that. And then I'm going to add, then I'm going to add a thicker yellow. This is how with 3 colours you can produce something that looks like it's been done with many colours. Like that. Okay, and now over here I'm going to do my blue. Now to begin with, this is very light, just a light wash and not too much, like that. And I want to keep this down here mostly white because we're going to have a misty mountain. And down here I'm going to copy that, mirror image. And then I'm going to do a slightly thicker mix. That's too thick. So I dab my rag and that gets rid of too much paint. Now that's quite nice. A bit there. And now this is the tricky bit, this kind of idea of like cloudy shapes. And maybe just suggest this a little down here, but not a lot. That's perhaps too much. And then I'm just going to spray above it just to keep it wet, because I imagine here it's drying out and I don't want that because I've got one more thing to do, and that's a light purple mix. These are going to be some light clouds. And here we go. Oh, that's lovely. Really nice and delicate. Try and blend this a little. There we go. And then a slight suggestion of this down here. And this one too. That will do. And then I'm going to get, so I use basically my hake for that. Then I'm going to get my liner brush, wet it, dry it, and then I'm going to paint across like this. Just create a few ripple effects here. Like that. I might even add a little bit of yellow and do that. Might be a bad idea. That's just an experiment, and I didn't intend to do that, but sometimes it's good just to be impulsive and try something. It will probably fail. Experiments normally do, but it's a good habit to have because that's the way you discover new things. But it is a costly price because, like I said, normally it fails. But by trying new things, you'll really develop, and you'll find things out that will work. There we go. Let's leave that to dry. I'm really happy with this guy because it's delicate. I mean, what we could do, I didn't plan to do this, but here's an extra technique. Tissue, fold it, get a nice corner like that, and then we're going to go over the top like that and create rim lighting. It's beautiful, like that. So I wasn't planning to do that, but it is fun to do. And we could even do a little sun there. And then, look at that. And then have that come down here. Just a suggestion, like that. Oh, it's not exactly right. Just widen that a bit. So, I didn't plan to do that either. But there we go. And then, that's lovely. That doesn't look quite natural, but it's too late really now to play around with that. But I think it's good enough. I'm really happy with this bit, and that blue is a lovely blue. Okay, so let's leave that to dry. Now we are going to paint the Misty Mountains. So this place is Beppu. It's a real place I'm trying to paint here, but I do take a bit of an artist license, so it's a little different. Now, because these mountains are in the distance, the colour I want is bluish mostly, but with a little red, which will give it more like a greyy, light purple kind of colour. So I should use some scrap paper. I've got some here, and I'm just going to test that. Yeah. That's good. Maybe a little bit more water. Now I need to think, it begins about here, it's going to come down to here, and I'm going to have two peaks. One. So that's one, and then here, number two. Oops. There we go. And then very quickly I need to wet the brush, dab it dry, and then I begin under here and I move in and I press down firmly like that. There we go. And then clean my brush, dab it again, and then quickly with this one, because all the time it's drying. And if my brush is too wet, I'm going to get a big ugly mark. You can use the tissue a bit, but it's a bit heavy, the tissue. We want it to be soft, so it can work. Doing this well does take quite a bit of practice, and it can still go wrong. But if you get it right, it looks beautiful. I think that's quite nice. And we want it undulating, not just a flat line. It could be a flat line, but I prefer it going up and down a bit. Okay, now we're going to do the bottom bit. So now we're going to wet it and we have to be careful not to touch the paint above. Otherwise, once again, we'll get ugly marks. And we have to be careful to know where it's going to end, about here. And I want it to be kind of dry there. So what I'm going to do is get a little bit of red. And that's going to be like the underside of the cloud. There we go. Just softening it a bit there. You could call that cheating, and I'm going to soften it a bit more there. It's tricky doing this. You have to be very careful, and you have to be careful to use a clean bit of tissue. You keep changing it, folding it to get a clean bit, otherwise you'll put paint back onto the paper and get unwanted marks. So now I'm going to do a bit of a thicker mix, and here, like that. And it's important to try and get this horizontal. Maybe a bit more there. And this is a very rough kind of thing. It's not, I'm not following some exact plan here. Just there's little bits where I want it to be high and other areas where I want it to be quite low, this dark mark. And then here maybe low again, like that. And I think that's it. So we've got this big layer of misty cloud below the mountains. Yeah, and there I've got a bit of a mark, so bring in the tissue like the heavy artillery and get rid of that. Okay, that's done. Now we're going to do the sea. So I'm going to use the same kind of mix as here for the ripples in the sea. And this line, horizontal line, isn't perfect, so I can improve it with some of these lines. So I'm using a liner brush now, and just do a few little marks. So these tiny little gaps could be buildings and things like that. But I'm slowly coming down. Now, as you can see, my hand is resting on the paper. And the reason for that is that it gives me a bit more control. And now I'm going to press down harder, and I'm hoping for a bit more of a, whoops, that's not what I wanted, almost, try again. So I'm going to press down a bit harder, and I'm hoping for this dry brush effect, but it's not happening yet. There we go. That's what I was trying to do. Now my boat's going to be here, so I don't really want to do too many marks there. Now I'm switching over to the bamboo brush. Just clean it. And I want to make it a little bit stronger and maybe a little bit bluer. And now dry it. That's very important. Don't want it to have too much paint. And here we go. Really, I should have some scrap paper to test this on, because this is a bit wetter than I wanted it. Okay, let's have another go here. Oh, now that's looking beautiful. That's what I wanted. But maybe a few lines here and here just to join it together. Yeah. And then finally, blue. Almost blue, not quite. That is way too blue. But really strong now for the last bit. Getting these tones right is so tricky and so important. Whoops. Tissue is good for getting rid of splatter. You often get a lot of splatter. And here are the final marks. Maybe this is a bit too much. And what happens is these marks are slowly going to join together. And there we go. That worked out really, really well. Look how beautiful that looks. Now let's leave that to dry. So now I'm going to do a crop of land coming out here, and this is the important thing. We don't want it to be too green on top. So although I'm going to begin with yellow, that's too watery. There we go. I want and a bit of blue, not green, blue, bit more blue, and bit more blue. And then we add some red, and that's really going to grey it down. And that's what we want. We don't want too brilliant a green, because it won't look natural. So sometimes it's important to subdue your colours. Okay, maybe that one's a bit too subdued though. So take your time making this mix, getting it right. There we go. I think I'm happy with that. So I'm going to do it here. I'm going to have it quite high. And I'm thinking it's going to come down to about here. Then we're going to have rocks and then shadow here. So here we go. Dab it on the rag so I get a more dry brush effect. You see that? There was too much water. And it comes out like that. And then it comes down here like that. Okay, then I'm going to whack in a grey mix. So I need my red, and I need my blue, and I need more red. There we go. There's my grey. Purpley grey. I'm going to blend that in, and then I need a bit more time. So spray above. There we go. And I might just use this brush and some of my green mix like that, just to get that bottom bit right. Whoops, I didn't intend all this that's happening now, just wanted to get this done. Okay, and I might just do a little bit of purple here, just some little marks. Try and give it a bit of a three-dimensional effect, a few little dark areas. Okay, so then we're going to come down here like that, and then we're going to have a rock like that. There we go. Now I'm going to make that a little bit bluer, and then I'm going to have a rock here. I want it to come up enough so that it's above these mountains in the distance. This overlapping is really, really good if you can do it. I perhaps didn't need to do it with this rock. Could have had this as a small one. I'm going to do one more just here. And it's important to make these rocks look different and the gap between them to be irregular. That's so important. Okay, now this is drying out very quickly. Just trying to get this top right. Okay, it's good enough. Okay, so very quickly spray. You see I got a little bit of a dry brush effect there, quite like that. Now I'm going to make a bit of a grey mix, so get some yellow ochre and mix it up with that purple, and that gives me this grey, and then hopefully this is going to look different, and you want your reflection to look a bit different. Now I'm doing these as perfect reflections, that means 100% reflecting, but I'm not sure if that's really right because they're a little bit in the distance, so I have to do that. It's drying out too much. Okay, but here we go. Let's continue. Yeah, because they're a little bit in the distance, so these shadows might not be exactly the full length, a full copy of, not a complete mirror reflection. They might be a little bit not so go so far down. I hope that makes sense. Oh, but that looks nice. That looks very good. That, I'm not sure that copies that. Oh yeah, I think I went a bit wrong with that one, but let's try and hide it. Okay, that will do. This one too, it's not quite right. Yeah, now it looks accurate. So quickly spray above, keep it wet. Looks beautiful, doesn't it? Really peaceful. Now I'm going to get my liner brush and wet it, then dab it on the rag, and then I'm going to do lines across. Now you have to be careful there's no big drops of water on the brush because they can come down here, drop onto your wash and make a big splodge. Now if that happens, quickly dry your brush, take up or suck up whatever with your brush, your dry brush, that wet mark, and then just add some of the previous mix and blend it in and then spray over the top. So sometimes it's actually good to make mistakes because then students can see how you correct things. But that's what I would do in that case, and that can happen. That happens to me now and again, so it's something that just happens and you can correct it if you're quick. So I think I've done enough of these marks, but it is a bit addictive and you just want to carry on doing more. It just looks so beautiful. And that's it really. We've got this lovely reflection now. Isn't that lovely? I mean, I feel like leaving this picture now because it just looks so beautiful, and the boat is going to be quite a challenge and it will probably not be that great. And so I almost don't want to spoil this painting, but there you go. We have to hope that the boat will look good. But just by itself, look at that. Beautiful, peaceful sea scene. Yeah, wonderful. Let's leave that to dry. Now, the final thing is the boat, and the most difficult thing. So, first of all, I need to think about the direction. So it's going to go this way, and we're going to have the stern here. And then I need to think about the size. So I will have it about here, the back of the boat, then here the side, and the end. So something like that. And then this bit, which is the most difficult bit, which is the bow of the boat and the bit we can see. So if you don't like pencil lines, you can erase these and just draw them in again very lightly, or just soften them a bit, but I don't really mind. They'll mostly be hidden by the paint. So I think that looks pretty good. And then we're going to have a figure here with his cap. Okay, so I think that's it. I think we're ready to paint. And the cover here. And the flag. Yep. So I think I'm going to get my bamboo brush, and here we go. First of all, a dark mix. There we go. And I might want to just soften that a bit. Then this cockpit or steering wheel part, I'm not sure what you call it. That's a bit too blue, but once it mixes with this, then it will be fine. And I'm going to have this curved. I'm not sure if it really curves. We've got a curve here and a curve here. Whoops. Didn't mean to do that. And then here it's going to be dark again. So, got my figure here. You can use the liner brush for this if you like, because it is quite small and detailed. So okay, and then here we go. So that looks quite nice. So I do the upper bit first. Now this is going very well at the moment. Here's the canopy, the cover. It's quite a difficult angle because it only goes up a little, and then here, I don't really need to do this yet, but the underside is slightly shaded. Like that. I can always soften that if I want to. And then again, I need a thicker mix. There we go. Bit thicker. Okay, and here we go. That down there. That there. One up there, one up there. So So, oh, looking very nice now. Now the underside. So for this I want to start off very light because the light's catching this front of the boat, and I need to be careful I don't touch it there. I might do, and if I do, can't be helped because this is not completely dry yet. So if you want to wait for that to dry, no problem. So I want to get this shape, this bow shape, correct. It begins steeply, like at an angle, and then it comes down almost vertically, but not quite. And then as this comes round, it gets darker and it curves up. So that's quite tricky. That really is quite tricky. Okay, it's going very well. Ooh, suddenly I've lost my place. Ah, yeah. So here's the end of the boat. It's drying out very quickly though now. Okay, come on. So I want this bottom bit to be really dark. So it's not bad, but I just wet it. You have to keep wetting it and then you can work on it more. But I think it needed really to be a little bit longer. I know we're seeing it from an angle, so it's not going to be quite so long, but I think maybe a little bit longer would have been better. But we'll get away with it. Now the next thing I want to do is the reflection. And I want the reflection to be grey like that. So I'm adding some yellow ochre to this mostly purple mix. There, it's going a nice kind of grey colour. But maybe it needs to be a bit thicker mix, stronger mix. Ooh, and then too strong. Okay, there we go. So there we go. And then very quickly I want this to be like a accurate reflection, as if this was in fairly still water. Okay, there we go. We're not going to see that part though, just this side bit. But this cover, we're going to see quite a bit more of that. Okay. I think that's what we want. Then just spray it to keep it wet. Then I get my liner brush and do these little bits like this. And hopefully this will really bring it to life. Really, I've made this too far down. So these little lines like that. Yeah, and that's not too bad. Okay, and then I'm going to wash this out. And I'm just going to do a few lines across. And there we go. just going to let that dry and then add a few details. Now to do a few final touches to the boat. So here there's a bar that goes across. And here we've got various things like a hoop-like thing and a bucket. And then even a brush here. And maybe something else. Ooh. And then here we've got this flag, and we've maybe got a little something here, and here we've got this thing. It curves around like that. Ooh. There we go. And let's do the flag. Whoops. Let's do a blue flag. So I'm going to start off with quite a strong mix and then do something watery. Like that. There we go. And something else I forgot was like the antenna. I'm not sure exactly what it is. But it's got a light on top of it. Whoops. So I don't want to do this too detailed, but this little light on top might look good. Just a few little colours. And I might give this guy a red hat. Maybe that's a bit too colourful, but just these little touches can be nice. And perhaps some kind of blue coat. You can hardly see it, but just suggesting. Okay, so we're really getting into final details now, I think. So here I'm going to do a boy in the water. Yep, like that. Red on top, and then below I'm going to do a thicker mix. Here we go. And then just a few lines underneath. And a few lines across. Like that. And then some kind of string, not string, rope coming down. Have to be careful with that. There's some rope there. Maybe some rope there. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Just one more final thing that I want to do, and that is these buoys by the side. Now maybe it's too small to do this and I shouldn't bother, but you can do this. This first one might not work because it's a bit light here, but who knows, let's give it a try. It did a little. I'm not sure what you call these, but they just protect the side of the boat, don't they? But they're quite an interesting feature. In my original picture, well, photograph, actually wasn't like this. It was a black tyre and just a few white round ballish like things in a cluster hanging down. So but I think this is easier to paint and hopefully looks a bit better. So you just takes a little bit of effort. You can take your time with this actually. This is one of the nice, or rather one of those bits where you can get really finicky and you don't have to be that bold. And I just want to lighten this up here. So this is a bit of corrective painting here. I want to get rid of that dark paint there. Not sure if I can do it, but we'll try. Maybe I made it a bit fainter. I hope so. Okay. Yeah, a little bit it came off, just a little. Keep going. Yeah, now a bit too much, but there you go. I can always add a little bit more paint, touch it up a bit. There we go. And then here, perhaps don't need it, but if I lighten this, well, wet this, and then I get some tissue and I go over it hard, yeah, it's quite a nice effect. I know that disappeared a bit, but it doesn't really matter. I can always add it a bit as a shadow now. There we go. Maybe that's a bit too much, a bit thinner. Yeah, there we go. Okay, and I think that's really more or less it. I can't think of anything else to add. So there we go. So we've got our delicate sky, we've got our misty mountains, we've got this little bit of land coming out here and rocks. They are really quite big. Maybe I should have done them a bit smaller. And then here in the foreground we've got our small Japanese fishing boat. So please have a go and let me know how you got on. So the very final thing that I wasn't going to do, but maybe it's good for you, is, and it will be good for me too, is just a final assessment. So looking at the painting, like I said before, I don't like that too much. So have to be careful that doesn't happen again. A blue patch here and a blue patch there. It would have been better if I joined them together. Perhaps this could have been a little bit mistier. One thing I could do, and I can do that now, whoops, if you splatter paint, just quickly wipe it up. One thing I could do with these mountains, you don't have to, but just wet them. Wet the ridge at the top. Because these are in the distance, we want really this to be a soft edge. And although we can't get a perfect soft edge, by adding some water and getting some tissue, we can soften it a bit. So that's a nice little touch that we can do. Just have to be careful that you keep using a clean bit of tissue. So that's softened that mountain ridge and helped it to look like it's more in the distance, just a little. We could wet it again and do the same thing 2 or 3 times if we really wanted to get it much softer. So that's a good thing to do. Now I'm quite happy with these rocks and this piece of land here, but perhaps these were too big, maybe a little too big, a little too prominent, because the fishing boat looks quite tiny in comparison. So I might do these a bit smaller next time. What else? I did the reflections of the like the blue and the purple of the sky in the sea, and I'm not sure if that was a bad idea, because maybe without that this would be even lighter, this sea. And so next time maybe I'll do it with only just a slight touch of blue here, but try and keep most of it this lovely light yellow, because maybe it's really going to glow even more. It's pretty good, but maybe it could even be better. And I think with this boat it's okay, but I might try putting it up a little bit higher and making it a little bit bigger and making this a little bit smaller. So that's what I will try in my next painting. And after you've done your painting, I strongly suggest that you look at each element, the sky, the mountains, the rocks here and land and the fishing boat, and assess how it went. I think also this reflection is maybe a bit too much. I think it should have been a bit like shorter. Yeah. So there's something that I'm not 100% happy about with the boat. It's still good. I like it enough, but it could be even better, I think. But still, overall, very happy with this painting. But it's really good, no matter how happy you are with a painting, to do a real assessment of each element, because then when you do another painting of the same picture, which I recommend, you'll know what you're trying to improve and what would be the next best thing to do. So it's just giving yourself clear guidelines by which to develop your future paintings, and also what your possible weak points might be. Okay, so I hope that was helpful, and that's all. Bye for now.